Okay, fine. So After Earth, or Jaden Carter of Earth, as I like to call it. So
I am the producer of this show, by the way.
are you very good?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm in charge.
The point at which I knew this was a John Carter thing was when John Carter, the premiere, I went with my son to see a film at IMAX in 3D, and beforehand they showed the trailer in 3D IMAX for John Carter, and at the end of it I turned to him and said, "You want to see that?" He went, "No." So recently I was...
You were so proud.
Yes, and no, but this I hadn't seen the film. Recently I was at Star Trek with him, and again they showed the premiere for After Earth, and at the end of it I turned to him and said, "You want to see that?" Kid who loves Star Wars, loves all that stuff. "Do you want to see that?" "No." And again, you can kind of see why. So it opens with an explanatory voiceover of which George Lucas himself would have been proud. It's one of the movies in which there's an awful lot of plot exposition at the beginning. So in the future, mankind has escaped from Earth, which has been horribly polluted and destroyed, whatever. They've gone somewhere else where there are monsters that feed on fear, but the monsters are blind, but they can smell fear. So if you're not frightened, the monsters can't see you because you secrete pheromones when you're frightened. I mean, whether this works with adrenaline is never quite turned up. So the ideal monster hunter is a person who has no fear, who is emotionless, who is kind of cold, and this is called ghosting. Okay, so Will Smith is a ghoster in as much as he is somebody there. He's a ghost hunter. He can do this ghosting thing. He can hunt the monsters because they can't see him because he has no fear. His son, Jaden, who conveniently, the really father son that's brilliant, so therefore the father's name is a kid, and wants to be a ranger, but the problem is too emotional, much too emotional, so therefore it hasn't got the ranging skills. For complicated plot reasons, there's a spaceship which has got the monster, the father, and the son on it. And wouldn't you know it, they go off, they have to make an emergency landing somewhere, which turns out to be Earth, which has essentially turned into the land that time forgot. Set up at the beginning, they crash on Earth, the tail of the spaceship they're in. You following all this? This is really the setup. The tail of the spaceship is way over there, the spaceship is over here. Only two people left are the father and son. Father, who does the ghosting, no emotion. Son, who's too emotional. Son has to get from point A to point B to get the transmitter to tell everybody where they are, but in order to do it, he'll have to become more like his dad. Here's a clip.
This is us here. That is the tail, somewhere in this area. It's approximately 100 kilometers from here. We need that beacon. You understand? You are going to retrieve that beacon, or we are going to die. Do you understand? Repeat what I just said to you.
I have to go retrieve the beacon, or we're going to die.
So en route from going where he is to retrieving the beacon in order to do the thing which now said, but there are lots of sort of video game-like challenges. Like he has to get from level A to level B in an allotted time period. And en route, he has to not lose these little medallions, which when you break them, you can breathe. It's like, which incidentally is an idea which is stolen from Marine Boy. It's the oxygum thing. It's basically oxygum in space. And so what you get is, during the course of this journey from point A to point B with all these little things, the kid has to go from being, and this isn't particularly good for radio, but the kid has to go from somebody who has, I say here's the best way of explaining it. The kid has to go from being somebody who has the expression of that kid in Fred the movie, yeah, to being somebody who has the expression of Keanu Reeves in The Day My Face Stood Still. So Will Smith's whole, his entire performance is like this because he's not got any fear. And the kid's performance is like this, he's got fear. And he's got to go from being like this to being more like his dad. And that's it. That's basically the progress from to is the journey of the film. And you go, okay, so essentially that's it. You have to go from being somebody who's a little bit excitable to somebody who, in order professionally to be able to do their job, is completely uninteresting and boring and has no emotion. I mean, and it's a really strange setup. So secondly, directed by M. Night, shame about the last film. And it's one of those movies in which he's working from somebody else's material, and there's been a lot of discussion about how much Will Smith is responsible for for directing certain scenes and blah 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 blah. And there's also been lots of about Scientology going on in the background and Battlefield. You think if only it's really unusually dull, and it's unusually dull in a kind of John Carter of Mars way, which is that you go, okay, so this is it. The setup is the main body of the spaceship is over here, the tail of the spaceship is over here, kid is excitable. By the time the kid gets to face the monster, which is over there, he's got to be boring. as much as he's got, and you start thinking things like, okay, so they can smell fear. That what you mean is they can smell adrenaline. So in order for the monsters not to smell you, but you've got to be asleep. Your best defense against the monster is that you're actually asleep. But that's quite useful because you know what? Give it 5 minutes of this, and I'm going to be invisible to every monster that's in this film. And it's really, really strange. And in the case of M. Night Shyamalan, it's at the beginning of his career, right? Critics were really lovely to him. Critics said, oh, you know, he's this brilliant director. He did The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. It's the one which is overlooked. And then he made The Lady in the Water, or whatever it's called, in which there was a character of a film critic who's really horrible and really nasty and really full of himself and then gets killed in a horrible way. And he was like, why are you having a go at us? M. Night Shyamalan doesn't need film critics to undermine his career. If he makes movies like this, he is perfectly capable of doing it all on his lonesome. It is one of those really strange examples of somebody spending an awful lot of money with one idea, and the idea is you have to go from being excitable to boring in the case of this journey. You know what? You manage it.